15 minutes of totally useless about GTA Vice City that you're definitely going to forget by the time you've finished watching this video. Although you guys keep telling me that this stuff is actually really interesting. For some really bizarre reason, the limousine in Avery Carrington's cutscenes transforms to a bright, horrible green colour. I don't really know why they did this, but my guesses are it had something to do with the angle in the cutscene looking through the rear window. Usually when injured, you can pick up health pickups across the map to heal yourself free of charge, but this is America and healthcare ain't free. So if you do the same at a hospital, the player will actually get charged $20 per heal. And that's kind of cool, but you're probably wondering what happens if Tommy tries to do this when he's actually got no money? Well, as it turns out, the hospital will refuse treatment and you're not able to get the health pickup at all. Vice City was originally planned to be an expansion pack for GTA 3, but then it eventually became its own fully fledged game. Tommy Vercetti in the beta version wore originally a much darker t-shirt and his face looked totally different. There's a lot of changes which we'll discuss later in the video, but some additional things to note is that the original police cars were actually going to be white and not green like they are in the final game. And the Infamous was actually going to look a lot closer to the Lamborghini Countach that it's based on in real life, with a much more stylish rear to the vehicle which you may recognise looking very close to what it looks like in real life. Deep in the game's code, fans have discovered an unused phone call dialogue from a cut character named Mr. Moffat. In the dialogue, Moffat begs Tommy for help, saying he's escaped the coop again and will soon be tracked down. It appears that Moffat was intended to call Tommy after all asset missions were completed, possibly triggering a mission where Tommy helps him flee from the police. This was likely replaced by the mission No Escape, where you break Cam Jones out of jail. Unfortunately, no model or audio remains for Mr. Moffat. Interestingly though, however, is that Moffat is the real last name of Sam and Dan Houser's mother, the Houser brothers, who are the founders of Rockstar Games. Another cut mission involved Avery Carrington. According to the leftover text in the game, Avery would call Tommy to request a chauffeur job, picking up his representative and taking him to a place called the Gator Keys. Now, the Gator Keys was said to be outside of Vice City. Gator Keys does not appear anywhere on the final map, and it's presumably an area that was cut from the game, likely meant to be in a swampy area that matches that of the Everglades in real life south of Miami. And if you need any further proof, there's a file in game called LOD Everglades Grass that looks like this, and you can even see that texture present from far away in certain areas of the map. If Tommy decides to buy every property, he'll need $441,000 in total in order to purchase the 7 safe houses and 10 assets across the game. Interestingly though, all 7 purchases of safe houses only total $41,000. $400,000 of it comes from the assets. Interestingly though, the mobile version of Vice City halves the prices of all assets. The Printworks only costs $35,000 instead of $70, the Malibu Club $60 instead of $120, and well, you get the point. In Tommy's Ocean View Hotel suite, there's actually a poster on the wall featuring Claude from GTA 3. You might not have noticed it because it's in this comic style artwork which kind of hides the fact that it's Claude, but if you're familiar with GTA 3, it's pretty easy to see that that's exactly what this is. On Ocean Beach, there's a video game shop called Rockstar Video Games, with some GTA 3 character art in the shopfront window. It's a pretty cool Easter egg, and Rockstar Games do like to hide these small self-promotion Easter eggs in all the Grand Theft Auto games, and just hidden in tiny quirky areas that you wouldn't think to look. The Interglobal film asset was actually supposed to have one extra mission that got cut from the game as well. The code in the definitive edition files revealed an unused mission where director Steve Scott would ask Tommy to film a car chase because the studio's budget couldn't cover a real one. Steve leaves a special car at the airport for Tommy to pick up and likely cause some havoc for the cameras, resulting in him getting a wanted level and essentially creating a police chase scene free of charge. The mission wasn't actually playable in 2002, but the script remains inside the game. Interestingly, this concept was reused because in Vice City Stories there's a mission just like this at the film studio for Rennie, which Vic Vance has to do instead. Apartment 3C in Ocean Beach was originally actually going to be a usable safe house by the looks of it, because in these beta screenshots and in a GameSpy preview from 2002, it indicated that Tommy could take over an apartment after a mission involving killing its owner. In the final game, Apartment 3C is still in the game and instead now looks more like a Scarface Easter egg. But it makes you wonder, is this the property that Tommy could take over early in the game after killing the owner? Most likely, considering what's happened in the bathroom. Also, from this beta screenshot, pretty much proves that that is the apartment they were talking about. A variety of weapons were removed from the final game. These ranged from a taser, landmine, grenade launcher, a silenced pistol, which only came later in San Andreas, and most interestingly to me, a nail gun, which would have most likely been purchasable from the various hardware stores dotted around the map, and certainly would have given them more of a purpose. I really wish we could see how these would actually perform. It sounds like something straight out of Manhunt or something. Vice City is also the only GTA game that doesn't have an AK-47. However, the beta version was actually going to include one. However, you can actually still find the models for the AK-47 and the AUG, which was another rifle that was coming in the beta version, in Phil Cassidy's trailer in his junkyard. So the files of the weapons are still there, but you just can't use them. In the Vice City user manual, which came with the PlayStation 2 copy of the game, it states that Vice City's population in 1986 was 1.8 million people. That's quite a lot of people to fit inside this tiny city. The Desert Eagle is seen in the mission The Shootist, and Tommy is even given one to shoot by Phil Cassidy. However, the Desert Eagle never actually made it to the final game, and instead we only have the revolver and the regular pistol. In Boomshine Sagan, Phil Cassidy blows off his right arm in a freak accident while trying to show off in front of Tommy. However, when we later drop him off at the hospital, it's actually his left arm that's missing. And in GTA 3, Phil Cassidy also makes an appearance, where his left arm is missing as well, but that doesn't explain why his right arm is blown off in the cutscene, so whoever worked on that cutscene definitely got themselves into some trouble once Rockstar Games noticed the mistake. Another mistake that's really minor that you probably never noticed is that during the mission where Tommy saves Lance from kidnapping at the junkyard, he then returns Lance back to the hospital, and it then reveals what the original name for Starfish Island was going to be, which is instead just Star Island rather than Starfish.
Get patched up and meet me on the bridge to Star Island, okay?
Have you ever wondered where Sonny Forelli's office is actually located inside the game? Well, it turns out that the interior for this cutscene is located inside the Ocean View Hotel, right next to where Tommy Vercetti is in this cutscene as well. And that makes sense because the cutscene switches back and forth between these two locations quite quickly, and for a game from 2002 on PlayStation hardware to jump between these locations, this interior had to be somewhere quickly accessible for the game's memory, so it made sense just to put it inside the hotel from the very beginning of the game. Speaking of the opening of the game, it was originally going to be a little bit longer than we got in the final version. You may have noticed in the scene where Ken drops Tommy off at the lawyer's office, the dialogue feels a little bit cut, shall we say.
Shovel in my face. Go get some sleep. What are you gonna do? I'll drop by your office tomorrow and we can start sorting this mess out.
Unfortunately, there's no audio, but it looks like the introduction cutscene was actually going to be a little bit longer and potentially have a little bit more context. And this isn't the only example of a cutscene that was changed in-game. It turns out that during the mission Supply and Demand, where Tommy and Lance go through the canals, there was originally going to be a cutscene of them obtaining the merchandise from the water.
That's the last of them. I'm gonna start her up. I think we got some new friends.
There's an in-game company called Spanned Express, similar to FedEx. Rockstar are really clever how they do this and get away with it in almost every GTA game. However, an interesting thing about these Spandex vehicles is that you will never see them being driven anywhere on the map by any NPCs. This mission is the only instance where you can obtain one that's being driven by an NPC on the street, making this vehicle actually a lot rarer than you'd expect. And did you know that in this mission for Diaz, where Lance flies the helicopter, you can see a guy jumping off of a bridge? This guy turns out to be a Spandex employee, so I guess their working conditions aren't so great after all. Speaking of rare vehicles, the only time you can obtain a black Voodoo is in the mission 2-bit hit. For some reason, rather than the vehicle's default red colour, this mission spawns a special black variant which is extremely rare and worth keeping. I really like it how the GTA series does this. Certain missions have really special variants of vehicles, and you can't actually make the Voodoo black even if you take it to pay and spray, so if you come across this in game, you definitely want to take it. Believe it or not, Tommy never says the F word throughout the entire game. He does swear a lot, but he never uses the F word at all. And from my research, there's only really a few instances where this word appears in game, and one of them can be found on a poster inside of Phil Cassidy's trailer in the junkyard. Did you ever notice that you can spot a ghost tower far off in the distance towards the airport? You can only really see this if you're on the very first island. As soon as you transition from the first island to the second island, the tower will completely disappear. The reason for this is because when you're on the first island, this tower is a low LOD, so a low poly render in the far distance. Rockstar Games forgot to remove its far away low poly version, and instead only removed its actual up close highly detailed version. So that means you can still see this ghost tower way off in the distance. The tiki statues used for in-game collectibles are worth money because they're filled with drugs. They were actually influenced by the TV show Miami Vice, of which Vice City is heavily influenced by. On one episode of Miami Vice called Milk Run, there were drugs smuggled inside of tiki statues, just like they are in GTA Vice City. In Little Haiti, you can find the Romero's funeral home, which has a window display with loads of tombstones and funeral stuff. But there's a tombstone that reads Stephen Mulholland, and this is actually a tribute to one of the Rockstar map artists, Steve Mulholland, who probably added this in as a secret without telling anybody while he was working on the game. There's a record store in the downtown mall called Vinyl Countdown. Of course, this is a twist of words for the famous song Final Countdown. There's also a poster that can be found downtown, which is an edited version of Iron Maiden's mascot named Eddie. If you're familiar with the band, you'll recognize this instantly. It's crazy how they left that in the game, but in subsequent releases, it was removed, unfortunately. There's a hidden beach ball minigame where the player will be told how many times he's bounced it off of Tommy's head. But if you're familiar with the GTA trilogy, you may know that this was an achievement that you could get in game. Did you know that if you're facing north in game, traveling at full speed on a motorbike, you are completely unable to pull a wheelie? However, if you're heading south or any other direction other than north, you can pull a wheelie at top speed just fine. This is really peculiar, never really been explained extensively, and just makes it seem like the motorbike has some sort of magnetic pull or something crazy going on. There's photographs of developers who worked on the game inside the Motorcycle Angels Club that Mitch Baker hangs out in, and during a cutscene with Mitch Baker, you can actually see an NPC that was supposed to be spawned on the ground, a waitress I believe, but for some reason it's gone wrong and you can only see their head poking through the floor. There's also loads of photographs of real people and magazine covers that definitely would have got Rockstar in trouble for copyright. The store clerk behind the counter at Ammunition uses a facial texture of Sam Hauser. You could also see a Rockstar logo on his outfit as well. But here's something pretty cool. If you stand on the counter with a rocket launcher, aim towards the windows, then turn around while still aiming, you'll be able to see through the wall and see a secret image that the Rockstar devs decided to leave in the game for us to find. Whoever found this first must have been so confused. Eventually in the game, you're going to have to do a checkpoint based mission in a speedboat when you first meet Umberto Rubina. At a certain point, you're going to have to jump this piece of land over this ramp, and you'll see a bunch of people jogging on the golf course. It turns out that if you manage to hit these people, you'll end up getting a $100 bonus. In the mission Hit the Courier, if you actually follow the target, you can end up discovering a secret room. There's a room which doors open and these NPCs come out that are supposed to be there when you arrive in order to shoot at you. But if you get there early enough, you can see the doors opening, and you can take them out and gain access to this small secret room. But don't fail the mission while you're inside of here, because you will literally get stuck and there's no way out of here. The world record speedrun for beating GTA Vice City is just 8 minutes. In the any percent category, the only goal is to reach the end of the game by any means necessary, and that includes using glitches, skips, and route optimizations. The reason the game can be beaten so quickly is because of a huge glitch called the credits warp. The game is tricked into thinking the final cutscene and the end of the game should play way earlier than it's intended, and this is done by using a combination of mission stacking, which is stacking multiple missions at once, precise pausing and saving, and manipulating the game's memory using rampages and phone calls. By doing this, the game gets confused and jumps straight to the ending of the game. It's an extremely basic way of explaining it, but just know that this has been 2 decades in the making that's brought us to this point. It was only a few years ago that it was several hours to beat the game. Now it's literally done in less than 10 minutes time. Fun fact, I'm really close to 300,000 subscribers. Tons of you have subscribed in the last week alone, and I'm absolutely loving your support. So if you've enjoyed this video so far, then please do consider joining if you haven't already.